Imagine finding out that your wife isn't just cheating, but that she's cheating with your 18-year-old daughter's boyfriend. That alone is shocking enough. But what happens next turns this betrayal into something truly surreal. That boyfriend becomes your daughter's stepdad. It's a twist no family could prepare for. And stay until the end because a final story reveals how an open marriage spiraled out of control, leaving heartbreak and devastation in its wake. Hello, everyone. My name is Ben, and I've recently walked through a personal hell I had never imagined possible. If someone had told me a year ago that my 20-year marriage would end because my wife cheated on me with our 18-year-old daughter's boyfriend, I would have thought they were out of their mind. But today, it's my harsh reality as I attempt to mend my broken life. Actually, our broken lives. Because my daughter is so devastated that there are no words to describe it. Let me start from the beginning so you can understand how everything unraveled. About a year ago, my daughter Emma, who had just turned 18 at the time, introduced us to her new boyfriend Ryan. From the moment I met him, I didn't like him. He was a smooth-talking guy with a flashy smile. Something about him just didn't sit right with me. It wasn't the 2-year age gap that bothered me. It was his demeanor. Emma was convinced he was the one, but I saw him for what he was, a player. I voiced my concerns to my wife, Samantha. She agreed that Ryan seemed insincere and had a player vibe, but she reminded me that Emma was an adult now. "We can't control who she chooses to date, Ben," she said. "If we try to interfere too much, we might push her away." I realized she was right. It wasn't my decision to make. Reluctantly, I accepted the situation, hoping the relationship would fizzle out on its own. But things started getting weird quickly. Samantha works from home, so she's usually around the house during the day. One day, I came home early and heard giggling coming from the living room. From the hallway, I overheard Ryan say to Samantha, "You look extremely hot in these photos. If I didn't know you were 40, I'd guess you're 22. That was the last straw. I stepped into the living room. There they were, Samantha and Ryan sitting unusually close on the couch, giggling. Emma was on Ryan's other side, looking visibly upset. "What the heck is going on here?" I demanded. Samantha looked up with a laugh. "Oh, hey, honey. We're just looking at some family photos," she said nonchalantly. I noticed Emma glaring at her mother. "Why is Emma upset?" I asked. Samantha waved it off, saying, "She's making a mountain out of a molehill." Emma couldn't hold back any longer. "You're flirting with my boyfriend and you think it's nothing? I hate you," she shouted before rushing to her room. Ryan remained seated beside Samantha until I told him, "Maybe you should talk to Emma or head home." He chose to leave. That infuriated me even more. Clearly, my daughter wasn't his priority. I confronted Samantha. "Why aren't you working, and why are you flirting with Emma's boyfriend?" She laughed and said, "It's kind of hot seeing you jealous of him. If you haven't noticed, he is way too young for me." She leaned in and whispered, "I was trying to show Emma that Ryan is a ladies' man, but I didn't expect her to get mad at me instead of him." It made a twisted kind of sense. She added, "Your little jealousy episode is quite the turn-on. One thing led to another, and we ended up getting intimate right there in the living room. I must admit that all my doubts faded away." A couple of weeks later, I walked into the kitchen to find Samantha and Ryan engaged in a playful food fight. Flour was everywhere, and they were laughing like old friends. Emma was nowhere to be seen. "What's going on here?" I asked, trying to keep my cool. Samantha grinned. "Just baking some cookies for Emma. Ryan here wanted to surprise her but didn't have enough skills." Ryan smirked but didn't say anything. I felt a knot in my stomach but brushed it off, hoping I was overreacting. That evening, Emma came to me, her eyes filled with worry. "Dad, Mom is still flirting with Ryan. I'm scared something is going on between them." "Why won't you do anything?" she pleaded. I wanted to believe that Samantha would never cross that line. "Emma, I'm sure it's nothing. Your mother loves you and would never hurt you like that," I tried to reassure her. But she wasn't convinced. "You're just ignoring the problem," she exclaimed before leaving the room. A couple of weeks later, Emma came to me with tears in her eyes. "Dad, I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "I saw Mom and Ryan flirting again. This time they kissed." My heart sank. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, hoping she was mistaken. "Yes, I saw it with my own eyes in the kitchen. They were laughing, and then they kissed," she insisted. I didn't want to believe it. Emma, maybe you misinterpreted what you saw. Your mother would never do that. I tried to reassure her. She looked at me with a mix of frustration and sadness. Why won't you believe me? I'm not making this up. Despite my reservations, I decided to confront Samantha. Emma says she saw you and Ryan kissing. What's going on? I asked. Samantha rolled her eyes. Oh, please. She's overreacting. You know how she can be, she said dismissively. Are you saying she's lying? I pressed. I'm saying she's making a big deal out of nothing. I was just teasing Ryan to show Emma his true colors. Yes, he tried to kiss me, but I turned my head away, Samantha replied, brushing it off. I wanted to believe her, so I let it go, thinking perhaps Emma was mistaken or misinterpreting the situation. One day I returned home earlier than expected from a business trip. The house was eerily quiet. As I headed upstairs, I heard muffled voices and soft laughter coming from our bedroom. My heart pounded as I opened the door. There they were, Samantha and Ryan, together in the most intimate way. I couldn't believe my eyes. What is this? I shouted. They scrambled to cover themselves. Rage consumed me. Without thinking, I punched Ryan square in the face. Get out of my house, I yelled. He grabbed his clothes and bolted downstairs. Samantha tried to reach out to me. Ben, please let me explain, she cried. I was seething. Pack your things and get out, I said coldly. Just then, Emma walked in through the front door. She saw Ryan rushing out, clutching his eye, and then saw me throwing her mother's dress down the stairs, the dress I had recently bought for Samantha. Dad, what's happening? She asked, her voice quivering. I looked at her, tears welling up in my eyes. You were right, Emma. I caught your mother and Ryan together. She stood there stunned. Then, with a resolve I didn't expect, she marched upstairs straight to Samantha, slapped her on the cheek, and said, You're not my mother anymore. I never want to see you again. After that, she began helping me pack Samantha's belongings. Samantha moved in with Ryan, a choice that ignited a wildfire of gossip throughout our small town. News traveled fast, faster than I could have imagined. Neighbors who once waved warmly now averted their eyes or offered pitying looks. Conversations hushed as Emma and I walked by, only to resume in whispered tones that felt like daggers in our backs. Samantha's actions became the centerpiece of every social gathering, from the local cafe to the church's Sunday potluck. The scandal was too sensational for people to resist. Some of Emma's friends began to distance themselves, afraid her mother might steal their boyfriends as well. The weight of the gossip and isolation took a heavy toll on Emma. She withdrew from the world, her laughter silenced and her vibrant spirit dimmed. It was as if the light inside her had been switched off. Watching her suffer was unbearable. It felt like my heart was breaking all over again each day. Realizing that we couldn't navigate this storm alone, I decided to seek professional help. We began attending therapy sessions with a compassionate psychologist who provided a safe space for us to express our pain and begin the healing process. Through individual and joint sessions, we started to unpack the complex emotions that overwhelmed us. As for me, I felt like a mere shadow of my former self. Sleepless nights and endless days blurred together as I grappled with feelings of anger, betrayal, and helplessness. Therapy became a lifeline, a place where I could confront my emotions without judgment. It didn't offer an immediate fix, but it was a step toward rebuilding our fractured lives. Emma and I slowly started to piece ourselves back together. It wasn't easy and the road ahead was long, but with each passing day, we found small reasons to hope. The whispers in town began to fade, or perhaps we just stopped listening. What mattered was that we were moving forward, side by side, determined to overcome the shadows of the past. 6 months had passed, and Emma and I were beginning to heal. Feeling it was time to move forward completely, I decided to file for divorce now that I finally had the energy to deal with it. It didn't take long for Samantha to call me. She said she was willing to sign the divorce papers, but wanted to meet first to part amicably. She also hoped I could encourage Emma to speak with her. Call me naive, but I agreed to meet her and even invited her to our home while Emma was on a trip with friends. We sat down over a bottle of wine, reminiscing about the good times we shared during our 20-year marriage. Remember our first apartment? How we could barely afford furniture but were so happy? She said with a nostalgic smile. Yeah, those were simpler times, I admitted. The warmth of old memories washed over us. The nostalgia was intoxicating. One thing led to another, and we ended up in bed. Afterward, she dressed and said she needed to go back to Ryan's place to sort things out. A wave of regret washed over me. I felt like a fool. Not only had I betrayed my own healing process, but I also risked reopening wounds for Emma. Days turned into weeks, and Samantha still hadn't signed the divorce papers. I felt like I was moving backward instead of forward, undoing the healing Emma and I had begun. I didn't tell Emma about Samantha's visit or how things ended that night. I tried to act normal, but Samantha didn't make it easy. She started messaging me almost every night, likely when Ryan was asleep. "I miss you," she'd write. She told me how badly Ryan was treating her and expressed deep regret for all the pain she had caused me and Emma. "If you can forgive me, I'd choose you without hesitation. You're my soulmate, and I love you more than anything," she pleaded. I wanted to believe her. Despite everything, a part of me still loved her. I naively hoped that maybe we could fix things and rebuild our family. Suddenly, a month later, Samantha dropped another bombshell. "Ryan kicked me out because I'm pregnant," she told me over the phone. My heart skipped a beat. I was shocked and didn't know what to say. "It's yours, you know it," she replied. "This could be our second chance, Ben." I was skeptical but couldn't ignore the possibility. "We need to do a paternity test," I insisted. Samantha tried to convince me not to go down that path, but she finally agreed. At this point, I wasn't so naive anymore. I felt she was trying to use me, knowing that Ryan wouldn't help raise the child. Still, deep down, I really wished that this kid was mine. When the results came back, they confirmed the harsh truth. I was not the father. It was clear she had tried to deceive me into staying with her. I even suspected that she was already pregnant when we were together. But she still begged for my forgiveness. "You're the love of my life, and I don't want to lose you forever," she implored. But how could she expect me to forgive such a betrayal? Did she ever think about Emma and her feelings now that she's expecting her ex-boyfriend's child, who is now also her half-brother? It can't be more complicated than this. Emma also heard that Ryan had gotten her mother pregnant and then abandoned her. I knew that if I took Samantha back, Emma would never speak to either of us again. At this point, my daughter was the most important person in my life. I told Samantha that even if I could forgive her someday, it was impossible for us to be together. The trauma she had caused me and our daughter was beyond words. I begged her to sign the divorce papers, and she finally did. Now she's living alone, preparing to raise the child by herself. We still talk occasionally because she wants to know how Emma is doing. They still don't communicate, and I don't know if they ever will. Looking back, I realized there were crucial moments when I should have acted differently. I should have listened to Emma from the very beginning and trusted her instincts about Ryan and Samantha's flirting. By ignoring the warning signs and failing to set firm boundaries, I allowed that smooth-talking clown to remain in our lives. If I had forbidden him from entering our home, perhaps our family would still be together today, and all this trauma could have been avoided. I also regret rekindling things with Samantha after our breakup. Sleeping with her again only made it harder for me to move on. Despite everything, I still believe that Samantha was the love of my life, and it deeply hurts what she did to us. I have learned the hard way that sometimes love just isn't enough. Divorcing her was the hardest decision I've ever made, but it was necessary, especially for Emma's sake. She must know that at least one parent will never let her down. To anyone facing a similar situation, I suggest trusting your instincts and not hesitating to take action when something feels wrong. It's better to confront uncomfortable truths early than to deal with the fallout later. And honestly, I hope you never go through something like this. But if you do, know that healing is possible, even from the deepest pain. Hello, everyone. My name is Susan, and let me tell you the wildest, most unbelievable story you've ever heard. The story of how Tom Hiddleston promised to marry me. Yep, you heard that right. Tom Hiddleston, the Hollywood superstar, fell in love with me, a very average-looking 46-year-old woman. Or at least that's what I thought at the time. We had plans to start a whole new life together in London, and then everything fell apart. I ended up broke, alone, and back to living with my dad in his one-room apartment. Honestly, I still can't wrap my head around how it all happened. Before you go thinking I'm some hopelessly naive romantic, let me just say, I'm an intelligent, well-educated, independent woman. Grounded too, or so I thought. But let me take you back to how this whole mess got started. It was a Friday night, and I remember it so clearly. I was curled up on the couch, a glass of wine in hand, when I decided to watch The Avengers for the first time. Everyone had been raving about the Marvel movies, but superhero stuff had never really been my thing. Well, that night changed everything. Because then he showed up on the screen. Loki, played by Tom Hiddleston. Mischievous, charming, and dare I say, dangerously captivating. By the time the movie ended, I was officially smitten. I mean, the way he spoke, that sparkle in his eyes, and that devilish grin, I was hooked. Completely. That's when I thought, why not see if he's on Facebook? To my complete shock, there he was. An account with his name and photo. I hovered over the message button, feeling ridiculous. But then I thought, what harm could a simple hello do? So, I typed out a quick message. Hi, I just watched The Avengers and you were incredible as Loki. I didn't expect a reply, come on, he's a massive Hollywood star. So I sent it, shrugged it off, and went on with my life. Then 2 weeks later, I almost fell off my chair. I got a notification. Tom Hiddleston replied to your message. My heart nearly exploded. Was this for real? Tom Hiddleston messaging me? Or so I thought. I clicked on it, my hands shaking. His reply was simple, but kind. Thanks for the sweet message and for being a supportive fan. And just like that, my heart was racing, my palms were sweaty, and I couldn't stop smiling. I mean, Tom Hiddleston, the Tom Hiddleston, had messaged me. After that, we started chatting almost every day. At first, it was all very innocent. He, or whoever it was, seemed to genuinely care about me. He asked about my life, family, work, and even little things that made me happy. We shared stories and laughed a lot, and before I knew it, I was opening up to him like never before. Despite being a well-educated, independent woman, I found myself falling for his words, falling for the dream he was selling. Then, out of nowhere one day, he asked, "Are you single?" My heart went into overdrive. I told him yes, I was. He seemed so interested, so sincere, and I started to imagine what it would be like if this was real. The more we talked, the more convinced I became that maybe, just maybe, Tom Hiddleston was actually into me. But I wasn't totally naive. I had my doubts. I mean, how could a huge Hollywood star be interested in me? I wasn't a supermodel. I was just me. So I decided to test him. I asked for a video call. Tom agreed. We set a time, and I was nervous but hopeful. When the call finally connected, the room he was in was dimly lit, almost pitch black. There was a man sitting in the corner of a bed, with the phone set a ways away from him. His mouth and hands were moving, but the sound wasn't coming through. I assumed it was just bad Wi-Fi because, hey, that happens, right? But I saw his face. And, for whatever reason, that convinced me. I was sure it was Tom Hiddleston. My doubts vanished, and I felt a rush of hope as if maybe this whole crazy thing was real after all. Throughout our chats, he kept reminding me that our communication had to stay secret, because he was a famous Hollywood actor. He talked a lot about privacy and the media hounding him, and honestly, it sounded reasonable enough. So I agreed. I didn't even tell my best friend Nancy that I was messaging Tom Hiddleston on Facebook. I kept it all to myself, even the video call, feeling like I was protecting this precious private thing. Then, after the video call, everything seemed to shift into a higher gear. Tom told me he had fallen in love with me, and I was floating on air. He sent heart emojis, little kiss faces, and messages full of affection. It was like a teenage fantasy, except it was happening to me. A 46-year-old woman who should have known better. But I was smitten, completely and utterly. One day he told me he was ready to send his private jet to bring me to London, so we could finally be together. I know, it sounds absurd, but I was swept up in the fantasy. And then, the grand finale. One night, he proposed. He called me his soulmate, said he'd never felt this way about anyone before, and that he couldn't imagine life without me. I was floored, speechless, and then, of course, I said yes. I had visions of a whole new life. Marriage, living with Tom Hiddleston, and starting over in London. But he asked me to keep it quiet, just until we had a wedding date set. So I kept it all to myself, bursting with excitement and yet full of this strange secret joy. Then came the twist. Tom said his lawyer would be in touch to sort out the details of our marriage. The next day, I received a message from someone claiming to be Tom Hiddleston's lawyer. He explained that to prepare for our marriage, I needed to pay $1,000 a week to a special marriage foundation. Tom would pay the same amount to show equality between us, and the money would be refunded to me after our wedding. I know it sounded strange, but the lawyer insisted this was standard procedure for someone as high profile as Tom Hiddleston. So I convinced myself it was all part of the Hollywood lifestyle, and I paid. I mean, I figured I'd get the money back anyway, right? Weeks turned into months, and the expenses just kept coming. There was still no wedding date. Whenever I asked, Tom had some excuse about waiting for his film schedule to settle. Meanwhile, the lawyer kept demanding more and more money. I ended up selling my car, and then my apartment. I even sold the house I'd inherited from my grandmother just to keep up with these insane payments. My savings disappeared, and I was dangling on the edge of financial ruin. Yet, I clung to the hope that we'd finally be together. But when I ran out of money and couldn't pay anymore, I knew I had to talk to someone. So I told my best friend Nancy everything, thinking maybe she could lend me a little cash. Instead, her jaw dropped. Her eyes went wide with shock. "Susan," she said, her voice shaking, "you are the victim of a romance scam. You have to go to the police." My stomach sank, and I felt like I'd been punched. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down I knew Nancy was right. We went to the police, and they confirmed it. The video I had seen was a deep fake, a digitally manipulated clip designed to make me believe I was speaking to the famous actor. The Tom Hiddleston I thought I'd been talking to never existed. The scammers had covered their tracks so well that the police couldn't find them, and all that money I'd paid was gone forever. So there I was, broke, alone, living in my dad's tiny one-room apartment, trying to pick up the pieces of my life. The hardest part? Realizing that even someone like me, a grown, educated woman, could be fooled when her heart was involved. It's easy to think, oh, I'd never fall for something like that. But when you're lonely and someone gives you attention, even the most outrageous fantasies can feel real. And here's the lesson I learned the hard way. Never send money to someone you've never met, no matter how convincing they sound. If something feels off, trust your gut and talk to someone you trust. Love sometimes makes us a little foolish, but protecting yourself should always come first. Remember, the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves, hoping they'll come true. I have to admit, I saw the red flags, but I just didn't want to acknowledge them because the fairy tale was simply too good to give up. My hope in telling this story is that it will act as a red flag for anyone longing for connection. Don't let loneliness or the dream of love pull you into a dangerous trap. I never imagined I'd be sharing this, but I need to get it off my chest. I'm hoping that those who support my ex-wife will hear my side of the story and understand that I'm not the bad guy here. So here's what's been happening. My name is Matthew, and I've been married to Olivia for 5 years. We don't have any kids, and thank God for that, considering the situation Olivia has put our relationship in. About 6 months ago, I thought our marriage was rock solid. That was until one night, after we had been intimate, Olivia started asking me some strange questions. She asked, "Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be with someone else besides me?" She followed up with, "Do you ever feel like you're missing out on new experiences because we're together?" At first, I thought she was worried that I might be getting bored, or that I was interested in someone else. One of her friends had recently gone through a divorce because her husband was cheating, so I wanted to reassure her. I told her I was not interested in other women and loved her. But then she leaned in closer, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that caught me off guard. "Do you ever wonder if there's more we could experience together?" she asked softly. "Like maybe we're missing out by only being with each other?" Her words hung in the air, and there was a spark in her gaze, a mix of excitement and challenge, that stirred something inside me. It was a side of Olivia I'd never seen before. I felt a deep sense of dread, worried about where this conversation was headed. Feeling a sense of impending doom, I nonetheless asked, "What are you trying to say?" Her answer shocked me. It was a real bombshell. She told me she'd been feeling unfulfilled recently because I'm the only man she has ever been with. So, she wanted to explore new sexual experiences. She emphasized that she didn't want to split up because she still loves me deeply, but suggested opening up our marriage. She continued before I could even begin to process what she was saying. Matthew, I've been talking to some friends about this, and it's not as scary as it sounds, she said eagerly. She told me about her friend Lisa, who had opened up her marriage last year. According to Olivia, Lisa and her husband had never been happier. They've rediscovered their passion for each other, she explained. Being with other people made them appreciate what they have even more. She also mentioned a couple she knew from her yoga class, Alexis and Jordan. They've been in an open relationship for 2 years, she said. They say it strengthened their trust and communication. They share their experiences with each other, and it brings them closer. Olivia was on a roll. She brought up articles she'd read and podcasts she'd listened to about consensual non-monogamy. It's becoming more common, and for a lot of people, it works wonders for their relationships, she insisted. Imagine the excitement and new energy we could bring into our marriage. She was eager to convince me, painting a picture of how this could be a positive, enriching experience for both of us. Think about it, she said. We can explore new facets of ourselves, grow individually, and bring that growth back into our relationship. It doesn't mean we love each other any less. Finally, she paused and looked at me expectantly, awaiting my response. My mind was racing, filled with confusion, hurt, and disbelief. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. This wasn't just a casual suggestion. She had put a lot of thought into this. I realized she'd been considering this for some time, while I was completely in the dark, believing we were happy and suitable for each other. I took a deep breath and said, Olivia, I don't know what to say. This is a lot to take in. I told her that monogamy was important to me. It's one of my core values, and I wasn't comfortable with the idea of us being with other people. Right now, this idea seems really disgusting to me. I really don't want to share you with multiple other men. She frowned and said, I was hoping you'd be more open-minded about this. It's not about replacing you or diminishing what we have. It's about enhancing our lives. We sat in silence for a few moments. I felt a mix of sadness and anxiety. I need some time to process this, I finally said. Olivia nodded but looked disappointed. Over the next few days, the atmosphere between us was tense. Olivia kept bringing up the subject, urging me to read articles she sent me or listen to podcasts about open relationships. She seemed convinced that if I just understood it better, I'd come around. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. While Olivia saw this as an opportunity for growth, I saw it as a sign that I wasn't enough for her. The trust and security I felt in our marriage were starting to crumble. Eventually, after weeks of pressure and arguments, I reluctantly agreed to try it, mostly out of fear of losing her and hoping that maybe she'd realize it wasn't what she wanted. We set some ground rules: honesty about who we were seeing, always practicing safety, and not bringing anyone back to our home. She was thrilled, but I felt a knot in my stomach. I must admit that I had no intention of being intimate with any other woman. As I mentioned to Olivia, monogamy was one of my core values. I hoped she would soon realize that this open relationship wasn't what she really wanted. In my naivety, I even thought that perhaps she wouldn't actually go through with it, that the idea was exciting to her, but the reality would make her reconsider. But reality hit hard. The first weekend after we agreed to open our marriage, Olivia told me she wouldn't come home that night. She planned to spend the night with someone she had met at a work event. My heart sank. Trying to mask my hurt, I asked, "Are you sure about this?" She smiled reassuringly. "Yes, it'll be fine. Remember, we agreed to this. I love you, Matthew. This doesn't change that." That night was torture. I couldn't sleep. My mind was filled with images of her with someone else. The next morning, she returned home looking radiant. She greeted me with a kiss as if everything was normal. "How was your night?" I asked cautiously. "It was good," she replied casually. "But I missed you." I felt a pang in my chest. "Missed me?" "Olivia, you were with another man." She sighed. "Matthew, we've talked about this. I love you, and that's not going to change. This is just something I need to do for myself, and you should try it as well." "But why isn't our relationship enough for you?" I asked, struggling to keep my emotions in check. She took my hand. "It's not about you not being enough. I just want to experience more so I can grow as a person. But my love for you is the constant in my life." Her words were meant to be comforting but didn't ease the pain. I still couldn't bring myself to be with someone else. It felt wrong on every level. It just wasn't me. Olivia, however, continued to explore. She would go out several nights a week, sometimes not returning until the next morning. Yet she always assured me of her love. One evening she came home and snuggled beside me on the couch. "I missed you tonight," she said softly. I looked at her, confused. "Then why do you keep doing this?" "Because it's something I need," she replied. "But it doesn't diminish how I feel about you. If anything, it's making me appreciate you more." I didn't understand. How can being with other men make you appreciate me more? She smiled gently. "Because it makes me realize how special our connection is. No one else understands me like you do." Despite her assurances, I felt more distant from her than ever. Everything she was doing was disgusting to me. Our conversations became superficial, and the intimacy we once shared felt forced. After she had been with different men, I didn't look at her the same way anymore. My subconscious refused to believe that she loved me, because you don't do that to someone you love. One night after she had been out late again, I decided to express how I was feeling. "Olivia, this isn't working for me," I said as she walked through the door. She looked at me with concern. "What's wrong?" "I feel like we're drifting apart. I can't handle you being with other men even if you say you still love me." She sat down beside me. "Matthew, I do love you, deeply. This isn't about replacing you or finding someone better. It's about me exploring a part of myself I've kept suppressed." "But at what cost?" I asked. "It's hurting me, and it's hurting our marriage." She reached out to hold my hand. "I don't want to hurt you. Maybe we can adjust our arrangement, set more boundaries." I shook my head. "I don't think more rules will fix this. I need us to go back to how things were, just you and me." She hesitated. "Matthew, how do you know you don't like it if you never try it?" "I don't want anyone else, Olivia. I want you." She looked away. "You must free yourself from your internal boundaries to enjoy it as I do." Days turned into weeks, and nothing changed. Olivia continued her late nights, always assuring me of her love when she was home. But actions speak louder than words, and her actions were tearing me apart. She didn't understand my pain. I had been living this nightmare for 2 months already, until a new colleague named Matilda joined my team at work. From the moment we met, there was an instant connection between us. Matilda was intelligent, funny, and caring. We shared similar hobbies and had the same taste in music, and our conversations flowed effortlessly. For the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely understood and appreciated. Since I didn't want to be lonely at home when Olivia went out with other men and did things I didn't even want to imagine, I started hanging out with Matilda outside of work, grabbing coffee, discussing books, attending art galleries, going for long walks, and visiting the theater. It was all platonic, but there was an undeniable connection. Matilda knew I was married, and I also told her about the open relationship, admitting that I was uncomfortable with this arrangement. It felt good to have someone I could share everything with, someone who really understood me. After we had been hanging out for about 3 months, Matilda told me that a man from the gym had asked her out on a date, but she refused because she felt like she would be cheating on me if she went. Matilda confessed that she had feelings for me but thought it would be better if we didn't spend time together outside of work anymore since I was married. Matilda mentioned that she didn't believe in open relationships and didn't want to be the other woman. Her honesty hit me hard, and I realized I felt the same way about her. Sharing the same core values of monogamy and traditional family ideals, I couldn't imagine losing her. I told her that she was my true soulmate and that I would choose her over anyone else in any situation. I deeply appreciated Matilda's straightforwardness and sincerity. Matilda was happy but also felt guilty, thinking she was the reason I was divorcing my wife. I assured her that my marriage was over when Olivia decided to open our relationship and be with other men. I went home that night. Olivia was out as usual, presumably on a date of her own. The house felt empty, much like our marriage. The next day when Olivia came home, I told her that I wanted a divorce. She was shocked and demanded to know why. I explained that I had met someone who valued the same things I did, monogamy and commitment, and that we had a genuine connection. She became furious, accusing me of cheating and betraying her. I reminded her that she was the one who wanted an open relationship, and that I had been honest with her from the start. Olivia argued that an open relationship wasn't a free pass to develop feelings for someone else or to leave her. She said the whole point was to have fun while maintaining our marriage. I told her that perhaps this arrangement was fun for her, but not for me. In fact, it made me realize that we are not meant for each other. Matilda and I have been living together for a month now, and our relationship is everything I've ever dreamed of. We're like a match made in heaven. Ironically, I am grateful that Olivia decided to open our marriage because otherwise, I might never have had the chance to get to know Matilda the way I did. However, not everyone sees things from my perspective. Olivia has been telling our friends and family that I cheated on her and abandoned our marriage. I'm getting flooded with angry messages and calls. Even some of our mutual friends who were aware of the open relationship are taking her side, saying that developing feelings was crossing a line and that I'm the bad guy. But I genuinely feel I didn't cheat on her. She was the one who started seeing other people first, and it became unbearable for me. I know I agreed to the open relationship, but I can't help feeling like I was pushed into a situation that was doomed from the start. I tried to make Olivia happy, but in the process, I realized how incompatible we'd become. Friends and family may judge me, but they don't know the whole story. I tried to make it work, I really did, but in the end, I chose honesty and authenticity. So am I the a-hole here for leaving her to be with someone who truly loves me?